welcome back to Beginning Fabrication. This episode, the other morning I had a bit of a talk. I call it a rant. It's more of just a talk. Just saying to keep an open mind with where you get your inspiration from, not to judge people, not to compare yourself to other people. And I also just talk about a few fabrication pages that I follow on social media that are worth a look if you want to see what's possible and what other people will, oh my god, what other people are capable of doing. So I'll post up my rant, and hopefully if you don't agree with what I say, that's fine, but hopefully some of the pages that I talk about you'll have a look at and get some inspiration. So let me know what you think of my choices of the shops that I look at, and if you have any other shops that I should check out on social media, let me know and I'll happily take a look, because I'm always looking for new ideas and new processes, because I'm never going to stop learning, because that's what makes the job so fun. So I hope it's not too boring, and then after my rant I'll put up a bit of a tip about sanding, because that's always exciting. So sorry about this crappy episode, and hopefully the next one will be less boring. Alright, thanks, bye. Got my little crappy computer open because I wanted to go through some pages that I follow. Might give you some motivation on Instagram and Facebook. A lot of these videos are just going to be for beginners, so anyone who's already a pretty sturdy fabricator isn't going to get a lot out of these, but this if you're not following these pages, it's worth having a look. One thing I find few people seem to, I guess, bag out the bigger shops because they've got the money and the tools, the staff. I think it's just the wrong train of thought. Have an open mind is really important, and taking inspiration where you can is important too. Just because a shop has hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tools doesn't mean they don't have bucket loads of skill to go with those tools to actually know how to use them. So I'm just going to read out some of this list because they're definitely worth having a look at. There's heaps more. I didn't want to be here for all day. Alright, it's set to beanie up because it's cold this morning. These pages, where are we? There we go. Alright, probably one of my favourite shops that I follow is the Roadster shop. They're an American mob that do like aftermarket chassis and suspension setups, as well as full builds that are definitely worth checking out because they're like world class, amazing, very impressive. Nelson Racing Engines, obviously they do their twin turbo mirror turbos and whatnot, and really extensive engine builds and fabrication, but they also do pretty really full on full builds. If you saw that bare metal wide body Charger twin turbo Hemi, that's their build. Who else we got? Custom Garage, custom with a K. That's an Australian mob that do really incredible sheet metal work. The guy's name's Jamie Downey. They did the quarters and door skins and stuff on the Sharp HQ. Cutworm Specialties, that's another shop in the States that do really imaginative and weird, cool fabrication, a lot of bead roller stuff. Jeb Greenstein definitely thinks outside of the box. He's pretty cool to watch. The William Blake is another guy that I follow on Instagram. His name is Blake Clevenger. Just a really thorough fabricator. Ian Russell, he's off TV now in Australia anyway, the Full Custom Garage. I've had people talking to me about him, saying that he's a bog monster and he overlaps panels and blah blah blah, but I like his show, I like how he thinks. He's got an awesome imagination and he gets things done. So, you know, I don't metal finish with an orbital sander like some people do so that it looks good on Instagram. I finish with 36 grit. That's as far as I go. So I'm not going to bag out someone on TV who finishes jobs just because he doesn't metal finish with orbital sander. Who else we got? Ironworks Speed and Custom. Again, the customs with a K. That guy's name's Roger Lee. Definitely worth having a look at. Sorry, I can't find my list, is all over the place. Fabricated Metal. Fabricated's got a Y in it instead of an I. The dude's name's Bryson Smith. He does really nice work as well. I'd certainly go and look at him. Well, look at his work anyway. I don't know if you want to just go and look at the dude. Where are we? Southern Rod and Custom. That's an Australian shop. Shane Rowe. They do really nice work and all sorts of different builds depending on what the customer wants. So you get variety when you look at their pages. So I think Shane Rowe builds guitars too, so that's cool. Who's next? Aaron Gregory from Memphis Hell. He's another Aussie that used to work for Laurie Starling at the Chop Shop. He's been around for a while now and's got a few nice builds under his belt. Downtown Customs. That's one of those shops that I've heard people be negative towards because they're successful. I guess it's jealousy. I mean, I can't relate to 3D printing and CNC stuff and all this fancy gear because I don't have it, but I can appreciate it, and it's just awesome to know what people are capable of doing with their own hands and mind. So that just comes down to having an open mind, appreciate other people's accomplishments. You know, the people that have got all the gear and the skill and the guys and girls that are going to be more likely to come up with something new that you might go, hey, that's a cool idea, and put your own spin on it to do something yourself. So just don't look down at people and don't compare yourself. Aaron Bray, he's another guy I follow just because his work's cool. Again, he's got his own kind of knack for making customs look tasteful, because it's so easy for a custom car to just look weird, in my opinion. Next one is Wicked Weld Custom Shop. Wicked Weld Custom Shop. Nick McDonald is the guy. He does probably the coolest chassis I've seen. They're like CNC plasma cut, I-beam, crazy girder looking chassis rails and heaps of weird up and down the airbag stuff. Definitely worth a look. Who's next? Corey Gathercole from CJ's Rod and Race. He does really nice work too. It's definitely worth having a look at. There's BMV Engineering, which is Chris Wells. He's only half an hour or so from here, but I've never met him before. I don't know any of these people personally. I've chatted to a couple of them through social media, but I've never met anyone face to face. I'm not trying to promote their pages or anything. I'm purely just using this as a tool so that if you want to see some different levels of really nice work, these pages are worth having a look at, because again, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are or how good or bad they are, you're going to get some inspiration purely because you'll see something that they've made that you mightn't have ever thought possible, or you mightn't have even thought of doing whatever bead rolly pattern or any kind of fabrication they've done, and it could inspire you. Something might pop into your head after you've seen it. So just enjoy the process of how your mind will start to work once you realise what's possible. Steve Parmiter, he's another guy that I follow on Instagram. I think his Instagram name is Sparmy. He's like a real old school coach builder, you know, hand makes full bodies and just incredible. Marcel's Custom Metal, Luke DeLay, obviously, if you've ever seen the Boyd Coddington show, you'd have seen the Marcel's work. Again, proper coach works, so yeah, incredible what they can do with metal in their hands. East Coast Metalworks, that's a guy named James Timberlake. He makes these really detailed and intricate metal benches for hot rods or any sort of car you want, I guess, out of alloy and copper, rivets, bead rolling. Yeah, just really nice, clean. I won't call it simple because it's not simple, but it's not so over the top that it's gaudy, so it's definitely worth checking out what he can do. EJ Talek is another guy I follow, just because his work will speak for itself when you see it. Who else have I got? Vintage Tin is another shop, which is Wesley Barber. He's definitely worth a look as well. There was another one I think I missed. Steadfast. Henry Richards is the dude. He's ridiculously talented as well. So I think you'll be able to find tons and tons of pages to look at if you want to get some inspiration or just see what's possible, because I certainly don't know everything that's possible. So even though I've been doing this stuff for a long time now, I'm far from knowing everything. So just be happy to take in information how and when it comes, and give credit where it's due. Don't put people down, because there's nothing good comes of that. Alright, well, that's about it for my list. Actually, one thing I will say, that this is the thing that I use when I work, is just a little iPod-y doodad, because obviously you can hear I've got this most annoying voice in the world and a big nose. So I get a lot of sinus infection, which is probably why I sound a bit weird, and that gives me headaches. And once I start getting a headache from that, I can get a headache from noise really easily. And so just by having music playing even softly as I work, it just gives my brain something else to focus on other than grinder noise or hammer noise or whatever I'm doing. I don't play it loud, it's literally background noise, so I can still hear everything I'm doing over the top of it, but for whatever reason it stops my headaches getting as bad as they can do. So something else to think about. Alright, cheers. Okay, sorry to do this again, but there's a few more names that have come up in the last couple of days since I posted my rant that are definitely worth mentioning. Firstly, we've got Greg Maskell of Maskell's Customs and Classics. He's a dude that I've known of his work for years through Street Machine magazine, and lately I assume a lot of you would have seen the X-Boss XB Falcon Coupe. It's definitely worth following his work, even if you just want to look at that one car, but he does a lot of really nice work. Another guy is Andrew Clatworthy. He's in New Zealand now. He owns Street Neat. He does a lot of cool old custom, like old school work, a lot of hand tools, no big machines, just skill and determination is what gets him through, and his metalwork's really nice. Who else we got? Rob Godfrey of Toy Ton Engineering. He does a lot of race car stuff, but it's all show quality, and the metalwork and the engineering fabrication side of it is really something to see. Same with Paul Sant from ProFlow. He does everything from show cars to street cars, show cars. I just said that. Show cars, street cars and race cars, from motor builds to tubs, chassis, everything. Zagari Engineering is another, I suppose more of a race car, drag car inspired place, but regardless of what they're working on, their metalwork and engineering is impressive. Another guy I know just through Facebook is Frank Evans D'Angelo. He's a really talented panel beater, spray painter. If you go on a Facebook page called Keep Australia Beautiful Restore something, you'll get to see a lot of his work. He does lead wiping and panel fabrication, panel fitting, you know, just panel gaps, all of that sort of stuff. If you want to learn how to straighten up a car or fix rust and that sort of stuff, he's definitely worth having a follow. And then finally I've got Empire Fabrication. It's a shop in California. They do just beautiful work, all sorts of jobs from trucks to cars to pretty much anything. So I'd certainly recommend having a look at their work. Okay, so that's it for my second little list here. So I'll leave it at that, and if you guys know of any shops that I should check out, let me know, because I'm always up for new pretty pictures to look at. Alright, thanks guys. Okay, so now we've finished listening to my mumbling dribble. We're going to do something really exciting and talk about sanding. Yay! Even though it's not really fabrication as such, one thing, if you're building cars and bikes, I guess, one thing you are going to probably come across is bodywork, or at least sanding. Sanding blocks are another area where you can spend a fair bit of money. These Dura blocks, I bought a set of these a while ago. They're not cheap, but they are really good. But before I got things like this, say, I just had a few different lengths and different size diameters of polypipe, and this makes a great sanding block, especially on something like, say, this Camaro, which I'm in the process of blocking. Areas like this that have such a tight little curve, polypipe's great. It's flexible enough that you can shape it. Obviously this is shaped already because I used it on another job, but it's just getting into that tight little return there that you want to be able to do smoothly, where a flat block generally won't let you. And even with proper sanding blocks, this is a really flexible one, so you could push this into that shape by scrunching it with your finger and get it in there, but you'll probably find you'll also put a bit of a line at the top without meaning to, and that's where those circular blocks come in handy, the rod shaped ones like this. This block is just a piece of rubber, it's not even a proper sanding block. I got that from Clark Rubber or one of those kind of places. I think I paid $1 for it. I've got a few bits like this. It's quite soft as well, which is nice, but the surface itself is firm, so you can't, no matter how hard you push, you can't like push finger imprints into the surface that you're sanding. These little timber and alloy sanding boards are really handy. These are good if you need to keep a flat surface but don't have the required room for running this size one. For doing most cars that are slab sided, like Tiranas, Falcons, you know, most cars really, I guess you'll end up using this at some stage on the bonnet of the boot, the doors. It's really super curvy cars like 40s cars, Volkswagens, all that sort of stuff. You'll probably use more flexible blocks as opposed to boards. These cheap and nasty things, I think this was $3 at Crazy Clark's, one of those sort of places. This is excellent. I use this so often, it's crazy. It's a bit rattly. It's not, it's not the best thing in the world, but it's so easy to hold. It's nice and wide. It's flat, and you just get a lot of control over it when you're using it. Also, even when it comes to buying sandpaper, where I am anyway in Australia, it's a lot cheaper to buy sandpaper that width than it is to buy the strips of actual speed file sheets, or even on a roll. So I just buy this width on a roll. Here's some 240 that I'm using on the Camaro at the moment. So even though the sanding board isn't this wide, I'll still use this width. So you can see I've already used this twice, because I'll use one side, and then as it gets smooth or clogs up, I can slide it across and use the other side, move it over that way. So this saves me a lot of money by using this width paper, because it's a lot more readily available, and it's cheaper to buy it on a roll than it is to buy separate sheets that are already cut. Another thing, which is only in regards to filler really, if you're using bog or bondo or whatever you want to call it, is the applicators. There's some personal choice in it. I prefer steel ones, soft flexible ones. They're easy to linish up when they get too dirty, which you shouldn't really let them do anyway, but I don't do a lot of filler work, so I don't baby these tools. Paint scrapers are good for doing big flat areas. Just nice and even. Gives you a lot of control because it's got a handle. I think this was 50 cents, this tool. And then again, you can just make tools as you need them. This is just a thing I made for welding a steel cowl onto a bonnet, and then where it just needed a little bit of filler along the edge of where the scoop and the bonnet touched. So you'd put a bit of filler, say, along the side of the scoop, and then I could just drag this along, and you can see that little radius that it leaves in there. So it just made applying the filler easier, which meant there was less sanding afterwards, and I can't stand sanding, so obviously you want to try and put the filler on the best way you can. Hi again. So the other day, well, I don't know how long ago it was, because I'm not sure how I'm going to edit or release these little videos, but we spoke at the start about sanding blocks, and we even brought into the video this Camaro. I just wanted to give you a quick, while the sanding thing's still in my mind, I'll get my head out of the video so that it looks better. So I'm just using the Dura block, roundy block for doing this area, because it's a really steep radius. So with a long block that's flexible like this one is, two hands, you've got to use two hands, otherwise part of it's just going to be sticking up in the air. So you want to try and sand it in a way that isn't stop-starty, isn't going to make it have edges. So it wants to be a smooth, and because it's a 6-inch wide sandpaper, I've basically wrapped the whole thing so I can twist it as I go. So I'll start on one edge of it, and then as I move up the radius, I'm going to twist the paper, because that also helps me get a nice curve with my wrists. And trust me, being a man who went through puberty and teenage years, I know all about wrists anyway. So you don't have to go fast as such, you just want to make sure that you're getting a nice even sand on the panel. And with this undercoat, I like this primer colour because it's quite dark until you sand it, and it goes quite a lot lighter as you sand it, so you can easily see where you've been. And I change directions from time to time, just so that it doesn't sand a pattern into the job. Because this is already a a panel beaten car. This sandback is purely so I can give the whole thing its final coat of primer before it goes home. So you can see, I hope you can see that that's even though I haven't finished and I literally spent a minute doing it, let's widen myself up a bit and bring this closer. Actually, I'll just take that out of there. You can see that it's quite a smooth finish. There's no obvious lines where the edge of the sandpaper's caught into anything. It still needs more. You can still see where it's got those little spots. That's the, I guess, the spray pattern still showing from where I sprayed the primer on. And up here you can see these little dots, so you want to get rid of all of those. But for the small amount of time I sanded that, it's come up quite nicely. And there's no edges, whereas if I tried to use something like this block but on its corner, which you can do, it's not impossible, but it's just not as nice. You don't get a big surface. You're using a corner, so that you've got a more chance when you start that you're going to sand these little grooves in, and while you mightn't see it in the primer, you'll see it in the top coat, and that's definitely not what you want to do. So I'll pinch this now, and just the big block is the same. You want to use two hands, and you just want to go with the shape of the car. So these have quite a nice roundy radius at the top, and then it flicks out into a little flare at the wheel arch. So you just want to try and move the block to go with that. And again, I'm using two hands, but I'm not, a bit of masking tape gunk there, I'll razor blade that off. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it. The only pressure I'm really putting on the block itself is to make sure that it's curving that way to follow the shape of the car. Because as it comes forward, it actually needs to curve more, and as it goes to the back, it curves more. So you need to be wary that you're not sanding flat areas into the panel. So even though it looks like you can just one-hand it, which you can, but potentially you're causing trouble for yourself. So I'd try to use a hand at each end so that I'm pushing the ends on, which is bringing the middle out because of the shape of the panel. And then just try and be smooth. Don't let the block move your hands. Make sure you're moving the block in shape of the panel. And try not to roll it up over the top of that nice line. You want to keep this crisp. Maybe at the end, if it's too sharp, you can literally just with your hand on the paper run it over the line, because you can over sharpen these lines and some people don't like that. But it's a lot easier to flatten them off, to round them off again, than it is to make them crisp. So I always sand up to them, and if it's a line like here in the middle of a panel, you can do the old masking tape trick where you tape one side of the line and sand the opposite side, and then come back with your tape on this side to sand the top. But the more you sand, the more you get used to what you need to do to get the product you like, and you also get to learn about what grits you want to use. I'm using 240 because I've never needed to go anything finer than that for 2-pack primer. Top coat's a different story. You know, all different people have different desires for what they paint over for top coat, but for undercoat I find 240s, it's bitey enough that any imperfections it'll cut out, but then it's not so smooth that it takes days and days to sand a car, and it doesn't leave a good enough key for the next layer of paint to stick onto. So that's just a couple of quick sanding tips, and hopefully you don't have to do too much sanding in your life, because it's horrible. Almost as horrible as my face and my voice. You're welcome. Well, that's it for this episode. Again, sorry it was so boring. There was just a few things I wanted to go over. So this episode was sort of necessary for me because I wanted to just let you guys know to look around for inspiration. I know I say that word a lot, but for me, working on my own, I find it handy. So next episode, I've already got all of the filming done, so I just need to edit it, and it'll actually have some work in it, not just me gas bagging like a boring old man. So see you next time. Thanks.